So we are here today with Mark McBride, Director and Solicitor at Wallace Quinn. Thanks very much for joining us today, Mark. So in short, Amiqus ID is a platform that lets law firms manage their onboarding and compliance remotely. And there's hundreds of businesses now using the platform to help maintain business continuity during various phases of lockdown, and also in general terms as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today, and a bit about how Amiqus ID integrates with Denovo's case management software, CaseLoad. So Mark, just want to start off, see if you can just tell us a little bit about what you do at Wallace Quinn. That would be great.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm the Director at Wallace Quinn, Solicitor, mainly head up the new build team, but pretty much dealing with all conveyancing matters regularly. That's our main source of business as well. Probably about 80% of the business we do as a firm is conveyancing the house moves. I think there's a good security element with Amiqus. Obviously, when people are coming into the office with ID, there's no checks done in the ID, so it's more secure in that it's running some checks on it. The other thing is just the actual convenience or the speed that you can deal with ID matters as well. So, you send the Amiqus check out to the clients, they get that to their email. If you've ticked the box to say you want reminders sent, the system automatically reminds them without anyone in the office having to do that, and it lets the client do that in their own time. So a lot of the time you'll come in the morning and you'll get 7 or 8 people have completed their ID checks at night, things. So it lets the clients just do that in their own time, because a lot of them will be working or maybe working from home just now, but with the busy people as well. So there's a good security element, and also element of obviously convenience for us and for the clients as well. We've got quite a strict policy, or all firms will have, where you'll not want to obviously include clients into contracts, or you won't maybe want to be doing work on behalf of a client before you've verified their identity. So we're really focused on making sure that we do that, sort of know your clients, and a lot of times referred to as KYC or know your client, referred to as proof of identity or identity check. But you really want to know your client, or you want to identify the client right at the start of the transaction. So it makes it pretty seamless, to be honest, because we're doing those things right at the start of the transaction, and rarely ever get a problem where we're halfway through the transaction, we don't have ID. It's all dealt with at the start, and then we have our own policies, like we'll never conclude a missive for a client without having cleared their ID checks, etc. as well. So it's really good for that.
Sure. And so how does that process compare to the time taken in the past to complete compliance aspects sort of before Amiqus? So, for example, can you get more fee earning work done?
Yeah, I think in the past we would always insist that the client would come to the office with ID. The problem with that is that we're a business and we work general working hours, and so the clients as well. So contact the client and they'll say, well, I can come in to see you, but want to come in at 4 o'clock next Friday afternoon, which is a week and a half away or whatever. So you get the likes of those things as well. So, and then there was a time where maybe if we were struggling to get a client in face-to-face, we would say, well, if you email in a copy, but then we'll make sure when we do meet you face-to-face, the signed documents, we'll see the originals. But obviously, you don't really want to be emailing documents of that nature, so doing it securely through just getting the checks done and going through the different procedures that they have is obviously acceptable to the law society as well. So make sure that we're compliant in terms of what the law society want us to do as well, and it lets us do some transactions which are maybe not face-to-face. Maybe someone's moving from England, or we'll have a client moving from abroad, and we can verify their identity that way, and we can do it all really securely as well. So it takes a bit of a weight off our mind as well, because obviously fraud and ID checks and compliance is very important when you're dealing with conveyancing transactions. Obviously, when you're using Denovo or you're using CaseLoad, if you've got any existing information there, if you can draw that information in to run the checks, then it saves a wee bit of time. It saves that extra element of typing. The other reason it's good is because the way it's set up, once the sort of email comes in to say that the ID check has been completed, once somebody goes in, checks that and it's approved, then that check will then automatically save into the client file. So it's linked in with the file. That might not seem that important because you might have a case for Mark McBride and it will come in and you'll save it in as Mark McBride. But then you'll then maybe run checks on the file and there'll be a third party ID check to be done and it'll be Grant Yule. And that, come into the office, you'll say, who's this for? We don't know who that's for. So it keeps it nice and streamlined, and that when you're sending it out through the file, once that check has come back and it's approved, it automatically saves into the client's file, and obviously it creates the wee audit trail of the check, the actual request being created as well, which means that you don't have to log into Amiqus to check that somebody's actually sent out the request. It puts in the event in the system to know that somebody's actually requested the ID check. So it's all nice and straightforward, but making things nice and straightforward is often the hardest thing when you're doing conveyancing. So I mean, any time saved obviously is good, and we do a really high volume of these as well, which is good when we're busy. So the last thing you need is for things to take unnecessary amounts of time. So all those wee different bits and pieces will all add up in terms of time. But yeah, I mean, I think because the system's quite easy to use for the clients, we're finding that the ID checks come back quite quickly as well. So it just means that everything's all moving forward in terms of the transaction, rather than saying, well, okay, we've got instructions, we want to work in the file, we want to conclude missives, we want to do the earning work, but we can't do, not actually identify the client yet, because, you know, obviously you want to know key things like clients' full names or get their address right, etc., or double check if you've made an offer for the house, you've got all the right sort of people listed in that, and middle names and things. So yeah, it does. I think it does create a lot of sort of efficiencies from that point of view as well.
Yeah, and having seen some of the data in terms of the checks that you guys are putting through, I think it's in the thousands at last read. So
yeah, well, I mean, obviously we've got moment 2 offices in Glasgow. Was about to move to one office, and our office in Livingston as well, and everybody's been using the system. Plus, in addition to doing that and knowing all our own clients, we've got, because we're doing conveyance, a lot of third-party ID checks to be done for mums and dads who are supplying money, or gran and granddad or uncle applying some funds for the transaction. So you probably do on average probably more than at least one, but a lot of couples buying and mums and dads, so probably average more than 2 checks per transaction, really, in terms of, so we are doing a lot of them.
Yeah, and doing that remotely, that's been okay then over the past few months.
Yeah, I mean the current situation, it's been even more of an advantage, I think. Obviously, in terms of our own coronavirus policy, we don't want too many people coming into the office, so being able to verify the client and being able to do that non-face-to-face helps a lot. And then, there was a point in the past where we would be really hesitant to do any non-face-to-face transactions. With clients, you'd always want them maybe to pop into the office if possible, but it's flipped on its head now, where people don't want to make contact with anybody at all at the moment. Being able to do that, but knowing that the Law Society have obviously given that grace, and that you can do your ID check in, you can do your selfie with the code there, and you can still double check it's all been done right, and that the Law Society are happy with that. It does make a big difference, and it's we've got to try and create distance and have less people in the office as well. So more people coming into the office means we would need to have more staff in. So it's worked really well, and from a client point of view, the feedback's been really good on it as well, because it lets them do things remotely too. So.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. Is have you found that they've reacted to doing things like this digitally well? Do they think it's a better experience? A similar experience?
Yeah, I think that you still get maybe some of the older generation, no disrespect to them, that maybe are not as okay with the technology side of things.
Yeah.
We would always handle that when we started using the system. Would be okay. Maybe you don't have like an iPhone or smartphone or whatever, but your son or your daughter can run you through the process. So obviously more difficult now with distancing in mind, but mean, with the amount of checks that we send out, the actual amount of issues that we get with clients who really aren't able to use the system is very, very minimal. I mean, you've talked between 2, 3 or 4 in the last year, and you know the volumes we are doing, that's a very low percentage of the actual checks that we're running or doing. And we've also had some clients come, you know, buying houses with gifts coming from abroad, or they're coming from abroad to buy a property or to invest, and obviously you can still verify a passport or a national identity card or a license abroad as well. So being able to do that securely is quite good as well. I think that's one of the main features we've really liked, is that you can't verify the address abroad at the moment. You still have a utility bill or a bank statement, but you can verify a passport or a driver's license or ID card in foreign countries as well. So that's a really big benefit if you end up with someone who's getting a gift from abroad or buying a house based abroad. It's really good.
Sure. Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned the older generation, because I've been thinking about it myself, and I sort of, you know, I look to in-person checking and I go, are the days of that gone? You know, are they? But I don't know. What do you think?
I think that there'll still be a lot of clients that like the face-to-face element. I mean, obviously, things like Zoom and doing video calls has opened a lot of people's eyes to how you can do things a wee bit more efficiently without having to travel. There'll still be people that will say, I'd rather come in and have a sit down, do a face-to-face meeting.
Yeah.
So that will not completely go, but I think that the vast majority of people, for convenience sake, will prefer just to do the checks remotely. Probably 8 or 9 out of 10, if I'm honest, just because like looking at how we do it, the way we tailor it towards taking instructions at the start of transaction, hardly anybody is really insistent on coming into the office at that stage under normal times. It's really a case of they're quite happy just to do that stuff remotely and get on with the transaction. So
would you recommend using CaseLoad and Amiqus, the integration to other firms?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it's been a real benefit to us, to be honest. I think it's been really good. It just dovetails with what we do now. We don't experience any issues with it. The clients are not giving us any negative feedback on it, and it lets us work away and do things securely. And the law side have given it grace as well. They've said that, you know, obviously they're happy with the way it's been done. So you've got that sort of assurance that if you're doing that and you're running through those procedures, you're not going to run into any issues with compliance with the law side of things as well. And also, I think that because it runs a politically exposed person check, because you can verify people's identity remotely or abroad, etc., it covers off all the bases that we would want to cover risk-wise for anti-money laundering as well. You know, it's just a more secure way of checking things. And past, you'd always think, well, if somebody brings in their passport and you can see them face-to-face, that would be more secure. But everybody's probably been at the days of the fake ID trying to get into the nightclub when they were young.
Dancing.
I'm sure it's been done more than one occasion. But yeah, I mean, it just seems really safe and secure to be able to do those checks, and things come up obviously on the checks to reassure us that all the information's correct. Or sometimes maybe client will give you an address or whatever, and the report will come in, and you know they've had to amend it, or there's wee spelling things that have changed, and then once that report's in, we can make sure our system's right, and then we go on for there. So it works really well.
Great, fantastic. Well, Mark, that was great insight, and I really appreciate you taking the time to speak to us.
No worries.
All right, thanks very much.
No problem.